Good morning, friends. Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to have y'all here. This is going to be a fun day, a fun episode. We have had so much fun sharing the holidays together. I have really enjoyed just all the fun things that we've been doing together to celebrate this holiday season. We've been crafting, we've been decorating, and it has just been so much fun. And I have enjoyed every single moment of sharing this with all of y'all. I cannot believe that Christmas is just only a couple weeks away. It just doesn't even seem like it should be here yet, but it is rapidly approaching. So today I wanted to share with y'all some of my favorite baking recipes and some of our Christmas traditions. It is definitely a Christmas tradition for us to bake together, and I have enjoyed this week so much. It's been a lot of fun. Even though my children are all grown, I still enjoyed the baking process and just reminiscing and being reminded of all the special memories that have been created over the years of baking with my children and grandchildren. So I'm very excited to share this episode with y'all. I hope you enjoy this and you get a little baking inspiration from all of this. So without further ado, let's go do some Christmas baking. The first recipe that I'm going to be sharing with y'all is definitely a family favorite. We will be making cinnamon rolls in this recipe, and it's just a fun one for me because it's something that we do each year as a family. It's one of our favorite family traditions to have cinnamon rolls and hot cocoa on Christmas morning as we're opening our gifts. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this recipe with y'all. I hope you enjoy it. It is definitely a very delicious cinnamon roll recipe. I highly recommend trying this one. For this recipe, we are going to just need some flour, some yeast, some butter, some maple syrup, an egg, some sourdough discard, and some milk. And I will have all the excuse me, I have a cold. All the exact written recipes in the description box for y'all. So you'll have to go check out that link for all the, precise written recipes. This is a shaggy dough recipe, so we will add all of the ingredients together at once, and I'm just going to put them all in my stand mixer bowl, then take it to the stand mixer, and I'm going to blend this first with the my paddle attachment until it's all incorporated, and then I'm going to switch out the paddle attachment for my dough hook and use that to finish incorporating all the ingredients. And you will know that your dough is ready when it kind of starts to crawl up the sides of the dough hook, and then it will be ready for our hand kneading. And if you do not have a hand mixer, that is okay, because all of this can be mixed by hand as well. Next, we will lightly flour our surface and then just kind of hand knead this dough for about 2 or 3 minutes. We don't want to over knead because we don't want to make our dough tough. We want to keep our dough very soft and pliable. Once our kneading is finished, we will plop this into a well-greased bowl, cover it, and let it rise for about 3 hours or until it's, almost doubled in size. And it's probably a good idea to keep this in a warm place if you keep your home at cooler temperatures. I would use a proofing drawer or use your oven to keep it warm. So while our dough is rising, we will go ahead and mix up our ingredients for the inside of our cinnamon rolls. And these are going to be, this is like a gooey cinnamon roll recipe. So we're just going to need some brown sugar, cinnamon, some melted butter, vanilla, and maple syrup. And we will blend all of this together until it creates kind of like a paste. And once that has been blended, our dough should be close to ready about maybe now. Okay, now our dough is ready, and you can see that it hasn't quite doubled in size, but it came pretty close. And oh, isn't this just a beautiful dough? It's so soft and gooey, and I'm so excited. This is going to make some really delicious cinnamon rolls. So now we will just roll this out into the shape of a rectangle, and I am just using my silicone mat here because it helps keep the dough from sticking. So I'm just going to roll it out almost to the shape of this silicone mat, and then we will spread our yummy gooey filling all around this, and I'm going to fill it pretty close to all the edges until the dough is completely covered. Now I'm going to add some chopped pecans to this. I'm just going to kind of sprinkle a few. I'm not going to get too crazy and layer them on too thick. And of course, this is personal preference. You can absolutely leave the pecans out if you prefer. Then we will roll this from the long edge. And then I'm going to kind of pinch our seams together just so that they hold really well during the next rising. Then I'm going to cut the ends off so that I can have 6 really pretty cinnamon rolls that are all about the same size. So I kind of score it to make sure I get them all the same size. Then we will cut them, and then we will set them in a really well greased baking pan and let that rise again. And you want to make sure it's covered. Cover it before you set it aside for rising. And then these ones I only had to let them rise for about an hour and a half, and then they were ready to go in the oven. Now they are ready for the oven, and they rose up so well. They're so puffy and soft, I can hardly wait. So I'm going to put them in the oven at 400 for 10 to 12 minutes, maybe 15 depending on your oven. This is how delicious they look. Y'all could just put a little bit of butter on these and eat them as is, or you could spread a little cream cheese on them. These turned out so good. They are absolutely delicious. Next up on the agenda is another family favorite. I'm probably going to say that about every one of these recipes, but that's why I'm making them, is because they are all of my family's favorites. This one's a fun one. We're going to be making some chocolate popcorn. It is such an easy recipe. You could throw this together in literally like 15 minutes. It's so much fun, and you can just be really creative with this recipe. So let's go whip up some chocolate popcorn. All right, y'all, this next recipe is going to be a fun one and super, super easy. We are going to make some chocolate popcorn. So you will need some chocolate of your choice. I'm going to be using white chocolate, and then just do a little drizzle with some red chocolate, I think. And then we'll use some popcorn kernels that I'm going to pop in the microwave, and I'm just using raw kernels here, 2 tablespoons per bag, and then I pop it in the microwave for 1.5 to 2 minutes, just until all the kernels have stopped popping. You can use microwave popcorn here, but I would highly recommend that you don't use buttered popcorn, because it might affect how the chocolate adheres to your popcorn. It might cause the chocolate to separate. Now that I have all my popcorn popped, I am going to just spread it out onto a parchment lined or wax paper lined baking sheet, just to separate all the actual popcorn from the seeds, because we don't want any seeds in this. It might break your teeth. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just sort of sifting it through my fingers to get all the seeds out. Next, we will move on to melting our chocolate, and I'm just using a double boiler here to melt my chocolate. Once it is all melted, we are going to go ahead and mix it in with our popcorn. And This process is a little bit delicate because if you mix it too hard or too frequently or too much, it can start to break up all your popcorn kernels. So I highly recommend just kind of tossing it very, very, very gently until all your popcorn is fully coated. Once we have all of our popcorn covered completely in chocolate, I'm going to go ahead and spread this on a wax-covered baking sheet, but I'm not going to spread it too thin because once the chocolate hardens and sets up, we want to have some kind of clumpy chocolate pieces in there, not, we don't want it too like individual kernels. Then I'm going to go ahead and just sprinkle on some of these fun little Christmas sprinkles, but y'all could add just about anything to this. You could get as creative as you wanted to and add anything that sounds good to you. Just make sure you add it when the chocolate is still warm.
This next recipe is, so yummy. We are going to be making espresso cheesecake truffles. And this recipe is my absolute favorite. I primarily make this one for me, and I although I do share them, I wish I didn't have to. This recipe is so decadent, and I am sure you are going to love it. It's kind of like having your coffee and dessert all in one bite. Oh, it's so good.
This next recipe is my absolute favorite. It is so decadent. I just love it. So what we're gonna need is some powdered sugar, some graham cracker crumbs, some softened butter, softened cream cheese, some dark chocolate, and some white chocolate. And I am using espresso chocolate here, espresso chocolate chips by Ghirardelli. And don't forget, I will have all the written recipes in the description box for y'all. Then we are just going to mix all of this together in a big mixing bowl. You just pour in everything together. The only suggestion I have is to add in your powdered sugar 1 cup at a time, because you don't want this to be too thick, but you don't want it to be too thin either. It's really important to get the consistency just right. Then we are going to refrigerate this dough for about 2 hours. Once it is really well chilled, we can go ahead and roll it into some balls. And if the dough starts to soften on you while you're rolling it into balls, just pop it back in the refrigerator for 10 minutes or so. Once we have all the batter rolled into these balls, and you can make these as big as small as you want, just keep in mind that this is a very rich, decadent dessert. So I'm just going to finish rolling these into balls, and then we will go about dipping them into our espresso chocolate. I've gone ahead and melted our chocolate, and just a little trick for your chocolate, if once you get it melted and it seems too thick, you can add a little bit of coconut oil to this, but don't go crazy because then it'll get really thin and it won't set up very well. So I'm just going to dip each and every one of these into the chocolate, and then we will pop these back in the refrigerator for about an hour until the chocolate is completely set. All right, I've just taken these out of the refrigerator and our chocolate is completely set. So I'm gonna go ahead and just coat these with a little bit of white chocolate that I've melted and added to a piping bag. And I'm, not being super precise about this. You can kind of be messy, or you can actually be super tidy if you prefer, but I'm just kind of going with it here. And so I'm just gonna cover each and every one of these and then chill it one more time. And you do wanna remember that these need to be kept refrigerated. So once you've got them all finished and decorated the way you like them,
make sure that you put them in like an airtight container and keep them refrigerated. These are so good, y'all. Just absolutely so delicious. I highly recommend you try these.
And since we are on a roll with our decadent desserts, we are going to make some Oreo truffles as well. And this is also a delicious one. It's a longtime family tradition. I've been making these for years and my family really enjoys these. So I hope that you do as well.
This recipe is very, very similar to our espresso cheesecake truffles, only we're going to be using Oreos. So I'm going to put almost an entire bag. I used 14 ounces of Oreos, and you can see that I'm weighing them here. And then I'm putting them in my food processor, and then we will just blend them up until they are really fine, fine crumbs. Then we will pour our crumbs into a bowl and mix all of this with some cream cheese and a little bit of vanilla. The vanilla is optional. You don't have to really add this if you don't want. You do want to make sure that your cream cheese is softened though. So the only 2 ingredients that's going into this is the Oreos, the cream cheese, or 3 ingredients if you choose to use vanilla. Very, very simple ingredients, very simple to make. These don't take very long to make. And then we're just going to blend all of this together until it forms a nice moist dough. Unlike our cream cheese truffles, we do not have to refrigerate this dough before forming it into balls because it's a pretty moist dough and very easy to handle, and it's pretty pliable and easy to work with. So I'm just going to form this into my little balls and just line them on a parchment or wax papered sheet, and then I will refrigerate these for about 30 minutes before I start covering them in the chocolate. So while these are in the refrigerator, I'm going to go ahead and melt the chocolate, and for these ones I decided to use white chocolate. So I'm just gonna dip each one of these into the chocolate. I use a spoon to do this. I think it's the easiest. I've tried the fork method and I just feel like my fingers get too dirty because I have to use my fingers to, push it off. So I'm just gonna use a spoon and a spatula to do this. And I'm gonna go ahead and just coat each and every one of these in the white chocolate. And then I will go ahead and do some dark chocolate sprinkles over the top, or yeah, some sprinkles, or not, whatever those are called. For my decorations, I guess this isn't really sprinkles, some line work. I'm not sure what you want to call this, but I just melted some dark chocolate and added it to a piping bag, and then I'm just going to go ahead and decorate these a little bit, and then I will pop them in the refrigerator and let them set. Once they have set, I will add them to an airtight container because these ones also need to be kept refrigerated.
Next on the list is our family favorite. This one is also a recipe that I have been making for years. Gosh, since I was in my 20s. I'm pretty sure I started making this in my 20s. So it's an age-old family tradition or a family recipe. My aunt Joan actually shared this recipe with me, and I've been making it ever since. So it's very special to me. She was a very dear and near aunt in my life and had a lot of impact, and she just inspired me a lot in the kitchen. She loved to cook, and she shared that passion with me and kind of handed it down. So this recipe definitely reminds me of her. And so in honor of her, we are going to be making some mixed nut bars. This is a fun recipe. It's really rich and just delicious. I think you guys are going to really love this one also.
For our mixed nut bars, we are going to need some flour, some cubed room temperature or softened butter, some brown sugar, some mixed nuts, some butterscotch or caramel chips, and some maple syrup. And to this bowl, I'm just going to add in our flour, our brown sugar, and our butter. And then I'm just going to mix this with my hands, or you could use a pastry blender here as well, until it resembles a very like coarse meal. I guess you could say like a coarse dough batter. You just want it to be fairly coarse, not over blended, just until the butter bits are all covered with the flour. So you can see here what it looks like after I've got it all blended. And now I'm going to go ahead and pour it into my baking dish here. And then I'm just going to flatten it all down to make it hold together. And you can also use the bottom of a measuring spoon to do this. Then I'm going to pop this in the oven at 400 degrees for 10 minutes. While that is baking in the oven, we are going to whip up our sauce for the top. So we are going to melt our butterscotch or caramel chips. I'm going to add in our maple syrup, a little bit of vanilla, and what else goes in this? I think just a little bit of vanilla, and then we're going to take it to the oven and melt it. Get it all melted and blended together. But you want to do this on a fairly low heat, or use a double boiler because you don't want this to scorch. Okay, I've just pulled our crust from the oven, and while our crust is still warm, we're going to go ahead and sprinkle in all of our mixed nuts. And I'm just using a can of regular mixed nuts here. I used one of the smaller cans, and I'm just going to spread these all over our crust until the crust is completely covered. And then we will pour over our melted butterscotch or caramel sauce, which one you preferred to make. And I'm going to make sure I scrape all that sauce out of the pan because we want to make sure all of our nuts are completely covered. Now I will sprinkle on some dark chocolate chips. This step is completely optional. You don't have to do this, or you could use white chocolate if you prefer. I'm just a fan of the dark chocolate. I think it kind of helps cut some of the sweetness. And then I'm going to pop this in the oven again and bake it for an additional 10 minutes. And while this is still really hot and bubbly, I'm going to take my spatula and gently spread out my chocolate so that it creates a nice chocolate coating across the top of this. Once we get all of our chocolate spread evenly over the top, I'm going to pop this in the refrigerator for about 20 to 30 minutes just to let everything completely set. Then I will pull this out of the refrigerator and let it come to room temperature. And you can store these at room temperature. I highly recommend you do so because they are a lot easier to cut at room temp.
Next on the menu is definitely a Christmas favorite, especially with my youngest daughter. She really loves this one, so I primarily make this for her each year. But we are going to be making peppermint bark, and again, this one is a very easy, simple recipe to make, and you can have fun with this one and also be just as creative as we were with the chocolate popcorn. So I look forward to sharing this recipe with y'all. Enjoy!
This is such a classic recipe, but still a family favorite. So we are going to make some peppermint bark, and you will need some dark chocolate, some white chocolate, some peppermint chips, and then, some accent colored chocolate if you would like to do some sprinkling across the top. So I've melted my dark chocolate, and I'm just going to spread it onto a wax covered baking sheet, and I'm going to spread it fairly thin. I don't want it too thin but not too thick either, just kind of somewhere in that happy medium. And then I will kind of tap it out to get all the bubbles out of it, and then we will pop this in the refrigerator to let it completely set up. I've gone ahead and melted my white chocolate, and I do let my white chocolate sit for just a little bit to cool it off because we don't want it to melt our dark chocolate underneath. So I'm just going to go ahead and spread all of my white chocolate on top of this, and then I will spread this fairly thin as well, being really careful not to disrupt the dark chocolate underneath. And then we will sprinkle the whole top of this with peppermint, and you can use as much or as little as you prefer here, just whatever you desire. Then I will set this in the refrigerator to once again let it completely set up. Now that this is set up, I've gone ahead and melted some red chocolate and just added it to a piping bag, and I'm just going to put some red drizzly chocolate all over the top of my peppermint bark, and this recipe is all done.
All right, our last recipe for today is going to be sugar cookies, and y'all, this one is a fun one for me. This one also takes me back to when the kids were all little and we would sit around the table and laugh and giggle and make sugar cookies together. And then it was our tradition, after making cookies, we would usually do it a few days before Christmas. And so after making cookies, we would pile in the car with a big thermos of hot cocoa and all of our fresh made sugar cookies and drive around the neighborhood looking at all the Christmas lights. Such a fun memory. And so every time I make sugar cookies, it takes me back to those just fun family traditions. And I look forward to keeping this one going because we are definitely going to do that again this year. I hope you guys enjoy the sugar cookies. And don't forget that all of the recipes for everything that I've shared with you today will definitely be down in the description box for y'all.
This is one of my favorite sugar cookie recipes. We are going to need some flour, some sugar, a couple of eggs, some room temperature butter, some cornstarch, and some vanilla. And you can also add a little bit of cinnamon or nutmeg to this just to give it a little extra something. The first thing we're going to do is cream our butter and sugar, and then we will add in our eggs and blend that really well until everything is fully incorporated. After all of our wet ingredients are fully incorporated, I'm going to add the cornstarch. And the cornstarch is what keeps our sugar cookies from spreading. So this is a really important ingredient if you want them to hold their shape really well while baking. Then we will add in our flour and mix it all together. And this is also a very crumbly dough, so don't give up on it. Just keep mixing until it forms together into a nice soft ball. After we have blended or mixed up our dough really well, we are going to wrap it and chill it for about 30 minutes. So I've just pulled this out of the refrigerator. It's nice and chilled. This step also is important because it also helps keep our cookies nice and firm, and it helps them hold their shape during the baking process if the dough is a little bit chilled before it goes into the oven. So I'm just going to roll this out at about 1/4 inch thick because I kind of like mine a little bit on the thick side, and then just use whatever cookie cutters your heart desires here and just cut your dough out. We're going to pop it in the oven at 350 for 12 to 14 minutes. And now we have some fresh baked sugar cookies. I wish y'all could smell these. They smell so good. Okay, so I've gone ahead and made up our icing, and I just used a royal icing recipe, which I will also have linked in the description box for y'all so that you can make the same one if you want, or you can use store-bought, whichever you prefer. Now we are just going to have fun decorating our cookies. I've mixed up several colors here, just some of the traditional Christmas colors. Now I'm just going to start decorating, and this is such a fun process for me because this is where I really get to just be artistic. It's kind of like painting on canvas, only I'm painting on cookies. So I really enjoy this process. It's kind of just a mindless process for me. I can just kind of let my mind relax, and I don't really have to think about too many things. It's just peaceful, and I have Christmas music blaring and some candles going.
So yeah, this is just a super fun process for me, decorating the cookies and, just thinking about Christmases past with doing all this with my children. And it's just such a special, special memory making sugar cookies, y'all. I love this part of the Christmas holidays. It's one of my favorite traditions. I think one of the most special things for me about decorating cookies is just having everyone around the table or the island or the counter, just having fun and being creative and letting their own creativity come out and shine. And so that is just one of the most special things about decorating cookies for me. That does not have to be perfect. They do not have to be precise. This is just something meant to be fun and create memories with your kids or your grandkids. So I just say enjoy the process and don't worry about what your cookies end up looking like at the end. Some of mine did not come out all that great, but that is okay because they taste amazing and the process was super fun and relaxing for me.
Another one of our favorite family traditions, well, actually, this is a fairly new tradition in our family. We started it a couple of years ago, and I like to, after I've done all of our Christmas baking, I like to box up some of our Christmas treats and goodies that we've made and take them around to our neighbors, our closest neighbors in the neighborhood. So that's another thing that we are going to be doing. I'm going to just quickly box up some of these, and I'll show you guys the cute little boxes that I found on Amazon, and I will have the link down below in the description box for y'all if you're interested in starting this tradition in your family. Alrighty friends, that is going to wrap up today's video. I enjoyed this so very much. I really enjoyed sharing all of these recipes with y'all and sharing some of our family traditions with you. I hope that y'all are inspired to go and try some of these recipes for yourself. I think you will enjoy each and every one of them. I don't think there is one that you would be disappointed in my opinion anyway. I know we all have different tastes and not everybody likes the same thing, but I encourage you to at least try them and see if your family enjoys them as much as mine does. Thank you all so much for being here. I have enjoyed so much celebrating this holiday season with each and every one of you. It has been so special to me. I have just loved spending time together. I am looking very forward to seeing you all again next week. Until then, y'all take care and I will see you soon. Happy holidays!